What's happening, everybody? This is Captain RL. Hey, I want to talk to you guys today about anchoring etiquette. When you're most guides know exactly what to do, but for the wreck guys and anybody else who doesn't, when we're fishing for these reds and tarpon too, some of these bars that we fish on, a lot of people know about. It's no secret, and everybody wants to catch fish. And some people follow guides around. That's normal. Um, some people don't. They just want to fish where you're at, um, which is also normal. And anybody's allowed to fish wherever they feel like fishing. God given right. But to keep things, to keep it civil, I guess is a good word for it. Um, the best thing to do, man, is use the 100 to 150 yard rule. And meaning that anchor 100 yards plus from the boat next to you. These redfish and these tarpon, they can feel the pressure of these. When you get a lot of boats in one area, and again, everybody has a right to fish it. I'm not saying they don't, but when these fish feel the pressure in a certain area like this, and everybody gets trapped in, let's say, the Satilla River or the Little Satilla River, places like that, where the bar, what is it, a quarter mile long, maybe a half a mile at the very most, and you get ten boats in there. First of all, nobody's going to catch but one or two reds. Second of all, um, people are going to be too close to each other. So a lot of times it's best just to move on. If there's too many boats there, it's not doing anybody any good to have everybody stacked up on one spot like that in 6 or 8, 10 feet of water. Reds feel pressure. You can add, you know how you tell. You can add. We don't. You steepen up. You don't. They don't see them. You can't. You can't. They can't hear you. It is. The water's not clear. Blah blah blah. Ask anybody, any of these guides around anywhere, around Georgia, Florida, wherever, how spooky reds are about noise on a mudflat. And I know that's a shallower area and it's a more sensitive situation, but in general, reds are spooky fish. They really are. So when they hear outboards running back and forth, anchors flying through the air, hitting the water, trolling motors. When you pull up onto a flat with a trolling motor, well, when we used to have flats redfish around here, Florida still does. We seem to not have them. But when you pull up onto a flat with a trolling motor, the reds are gone. They're gone. As soon as they hear that motor, they're out of there. So you have to pole that flat. Again, I understand it's a more sensitive situation. But when you come up running an outboard, which is 50 times louder than a trolling motor, in 6, 8, 10 feet of water, they're going to hear it. And I think tarpon get a little more crazy as far as feeding goes when there's a lot of bait around. You might pull that off there with the motor running, but when you pull it to a spot like that, you got to set up right to begin with. So when you're coming into that spot, you pick out an area you want to fish, use the current to your advantage and the wind. Get out in the middle of wherever, away from the boats, and make a drift and see how you're going to drift into that area. And set up for that. And set up to where when you put your anchor in, even if it spins you around 180, it doesn't matter because you've already looked to see, how you're going to set up at another area close to that to see how your boat's going to drift in. It's exactly what we do as guides. All 30 years that I've done it, that's what we do. If we want to set up on a rip or a bar in a certain spot, we'll get up ahead of it, so to speak. That means up current from it, unless the wind's taking over. A lot of times in the fall, in the spring, it will. You have to think about all that. So if you're not sure, get out, like I said, in open water and see how your boat's going to act when you do anchor. And it tends to run a little bit faster on top of the bar, and normally the tide will take that over. Sometimes not, though. If it's too much wind, it'll take the tide over. You got to know how you're going to set up. So you can come in there, ease your anchor over the side, try not to make as little noise as possible with the anchor chain and everything. So throwing the anchor, bad in shallow water, bad, bad, bad. Tarpon, whatever, unless you're shark fishing, which most of us aren't. Okay, we're fishing for game fish, trying to make a living doing it, and come in there and set up right, and then judge your distance, ease your anchor over, you know, set the anchor, let the anchor hang, then let rope out accordingly. That's why you should have a couple 100 feet of rope in there in case you miss it by a little bit. you can still let some rope out. You don't get on top of people that way unless your anchor slips. If your anchor slips at that point, let's say you've gotten where you want to be and you're in position. If your anchor slips, let it slip and get by the rest of the boats that are fishing next to you. Let it slip on by, so you're not bringing it in, making a lot of noise, restarting your motor and all that, trying to go back to where you were. So the proper etiquette there is to drift on by, or you can bring your anchor up to where the chain's edge is. Just hold it right there at the rub rail. Let your boat drift way away, 100, 200 yards, at least that far before you crank up your outboard and go back. And then you want to go back around where you started to set up at in the first place, where you started your drift into that spot. That's the proper thing to do. You don't motor right straight back into your spot. You're going to mess it up for everybody if you do that. Yeah, also you'll mess it up for everybody there, including yourself. If you come into the bar or area that's shallower water, especially, and you come around just looking for a spot, just wagging tail all through the bar, just swaying back into, running the outboard all the way up that shallow water bar. You're messing everything up for everybody, especially again with reds and tarpon in some cases too. But right now it's redfish season, and everybody wants to catch one. And everybody has a right to. But that's, to me, is the proper etiquette about it. If everybody does that, we'll all catch more fish. So if we can all get on that page, it would be wonderful. Recreational and guides alike. We need to be on that same page, and I think most guides are. And I think recreational people, they're not doing it. They're not doing it because they want to try and mess stuff up. The people who do it, whether it be whoever it is, they're not intentionally doing it, which is why I've explained getting upwind, setting up your drift pretty close to the area, but nowhere where the boats are going to be interfered with, or the bar or the area, and see how your boat drifts in. And even if you have to put the anchor out to see how you're going to lay, remember what your compass says. Look at your compass once you come to rest on the anchor, and you'll know that's where you're going to be pointing. So you drift into that spot accordingly with the wind and current to your advantage. And that way you come in there silent. That's exactly how we do it. Been doing it that way for 3 decades. And so have the guides that precede us. So anyhow, if anybody has any questions, just leave in the comments or ask away, man, because it's just becoming a problem, especially in our area of Georgia. So this Florida, you guys, whatever, do it. Oh, I know y'all do it. How y'all do it, whatever. But here, I feel like this is how we need to do it, because these spots are small. When there's only a few of them, when it's blowing northeast, nobody can get out in the ocean. It's too rough, so everybody fishes inside. And these reds just aren't everywhere, So there's some places they congregate that are known places, no secret, like I said, and it just gets really crowded in there. And with only a couple of options, once you get, you've done run 10 miles to a spot, whatever, 15 miles, you go to that spot, and you come up there and you mess everybody up, you've messed you up too by running across the bar with your outboard. That's a no, no, no. So you set up in front of the bar, use the current and wind to bring you to the bar. Never run across that bar with your outboard. Don't do that. That's the worst thing you can do. So anyhow, I appreciate y'all watching. See ya. Fish on.